In 1984, the city of Bhopal was home to nearly 1 million people. Right on its northern edge, abutting densely populated residential neighborhoods, sat this sprawling pesticide plant, operated by a subsidiary of the American multinational Union Carbide. This schematic details the behavior of methyl isocyanate, or MIC. It is a chemical intermediate used in the production of certain pesticides. It is exceptionally volatile. If water or excessive heat is introduced, it triggers a violent, rapidly expanding reaction. The resulting gas is heavier than air, meaning it sinks to the ground rather than dispersing upward. Inhalation causes the lungs to fill with fluid, a condition known as pulmonary edema, along with severe damage to the respiratory tract. The Indian government had encouraged the plant's construction to build up a modern industrial chemical sector. However, placing an inventory of such an extraordinarily reactive substance directly beside where hundreds of thousands of people lived created an inherent catastrophic risk. By the early 1980s, severe crop failures across India decimated the demand for the plant's primary product, a pesticide called Sevin. Operating at a fraction of its capacity, the Bhopal facility began losing money. Union Carbide prepared the plant for sale. When no buyer emerged, they began systematically dismantling its operational budget. The workforce was slashed. Experienced operators were replaced by trainees. Vital safety systems were shut down to save on maintenance costs. Corporate leadership was aware of the deteriorating conditions. A 1982 internal safety audit had explicitly identified serious hazards at the Bhopal facility and recommended immediate corrective actions. Yet, those recommendations were never fully implemented. Deep inside the facility, tank E610 sat holding approximately 42 tons of liquid methyl isocyanate. The intersection of these financial decisions and safety failures made a large-scale release the predictable outcome of daily operations. On the night of December 2, 1984, water entered tank E610. Investigations would point to a corroded pipe and improper maintenance procedures as the cause. The water reacted immediately with the MIC, triggering a runaway exothermic reaction. The temperature inside the sealed metal tank skyrocketed. The pressure spiked. The plant's final defenses failed in sequence. The tank's pressure gauge was malfunctioning. The safety scrubber, designed to neutralize escaping gas, was inactive. The flare tower, meant to burn off toxic emissions, was out of service. Shortly after midnight on December 3rd, the internal pressure forced the tank's relief valve open. Between 27 and 40 tons of methyl isocyanate gas vented into the open air. This was the point of absolute structural failure. A ledger of ignored maintenance risks had translated into an unstoppable physical force. Because the gas was dense and cold, it did not dissipate. It sank. Driven by the night wind, a thick, toxic cloud rolled across 40 square kilometers of sleeping residential neighborhoods. People woke to their eyes burning and their throats seizing. In this hospital room, the immediate agonizing toll on a human body is clear. The gas blinded residents as they navigated the dark in a panic. Those who tried to flee on foot inhaled even more of the poison as their breathing rates increased with the effort. By daybreak, the dead lay where they had fallen in the streets and inside their homes. Local animal populations were wiped out, and the trees had shed their leaves overnight. The Indian government's official figure for confirmed initial deaths stood at approximately 3,800. The ground-hugging properties of methyl isocyanate ensured total saturation of the city, turning the simple act of breathing into a lethal event for everyone in its path. Over the following years, the death toll climbed to an estimated 22,000, as initial exposure turned into chronic respiratory and neurological disease. 500,000 were exposed. As seen in this photograph, families continue to suffer from elevated rates of birth defects and health problems decades later. Days after the disaster, Union Carbide CEO Warren Anderson flew to Bhopal and was arrested on charges including culpable homicide. He was quickly released on bail, boarded a flight back to the United States, and he never returned. Despite multiple extradition requests from India over several decades, he died in Florida at the age of 92, having never faced a trial. In 1989, Union Carbide settled civil litigation with the Indian government for $470 million. Individual survivors received compensation averaging only a few $100s. In 2001, Dow Chemical acquired Union Carbide, but maintains that the liability belongs to a separate legal entity, shielding the parent corporation from ongoing obligations. Survivors and their families have spent 40 years organizing in the streets, protesting the inadequate compensation and the lack of corporate accountability. The physical and physiological consequences for victims endure for generations, while the legal and financial exposure for the corporations involved was firmly and permanently limited. Today, the Union Carbide facility remains an abandoned ruin. The plant site was never properly cleaned up or decontaminated. More than 400 tons of toxic waste still sit at the site. For decades, it has been leaching into the soil, contaminating the groundwater that local residents rely on today. In 2010, 26 years after the initial leak, an Indian court sentenced 7 local managers to minor 2-year sentences. They were immediately released on bail. No American executive has ever been convicted of anything related to Bhopal. 41 years later, the site remains an active source of contamination. A chemical release that lasted minutes continues to poison the local population every day.